Well, let's bring in David Wessel. He's a senior fellow in economic studies at Brookings and the director of the Hutchins Center on Fiscal and Monetary Policy. David, thanks so much for joining us on Prime News Paris. So we've had another gloomy day today in financial markets. Fears, of course, high that these tariffs are nudging the world towards a global recession. What's your view?
Well, I do think that the tariffs are greatly raising the risk of a global recession. It was kind of interesting what happened today in the United States. There was a flurry of reports spurred by an interview that the White House economic advisor Kevin Hassett did, that the president was thinking about a 90-day pause on tariffs, and the market rose on that, the stock market. Then the White House says that's not true, and the market fell. Then the market rose a bit, and then Trump said he was going to put more tariffs on China, and the market fell again. And at the moment, it's basically flat. It's basically where it closed on Friday. It's almost as if the president has a deliberate plan to create uncertainty and roil global markets and threaten recession, which is really hard to believe that's his intent, but that's the way the markets are looking at it.
And of course, Trump isn't backing down. You mentioned there that he is now threatening additional tariffs of 50% on China. Where is this all going to end?
Lord knows, I wish I did. I mean, there's a couple of possibilities here, and we don't know which ones are going to happen. One is that we are at the beginning of a 1930s-style trade war where countries retaliate, and we drive the global trading system into disarray and force a recession that is unnecessary. It looks like the Chinese have decided to fight back very strongly. Maybe they have a game plan here to increase domestic demand or to take advantage of the hostilities that other countries have to the U.S. to build their own trading bloc. Europe, on the other hand, seems to be moving very cautiously and deliberately, but I think it will retaliate. A second option is that the president is freaked out by all this market action and the cries from people who used to be his friends on Wall Street that this is terrible, and he backs down. He has some face-saving concessions with some small countries and says, okay, I got what I wanted. And the third is that this is just a negotiation and that he will continue to press the tariffs until he gets some substantial concession from other countries. But it's very hard to figure out exactly what the strategy is here, and I think that's what's unnerving the markets and the American business community, not to mention the voters.
Well, I was going to say that one of the president's stated goals here is for the tariffs to re-energize manufacturing in the U.S., helping people that voted for him, reopening shuttered American factories and bringing more jobs to the American people. What's your take on that?
Well, it's very interesting. The president has a number of advisors. One of my colleagues calls it a court, like a royal court. And the different advisors are sending different messages about what the points of these tariffs are. If your goal is, as you suggested, to bring production back to the United States, that's a very long-run process. Some of it makes sense for national security reasons. We probably don't want to have all our semiconductors made in Taiwan. Some of it doesn't. We're not going to bring back a lot of sneaker production to the United States. It's just not going to happen. A second camp talks about this as a way to raise a lot of revenues. Well, you only raise revenues if you continue importing. So it's not really clear what the strategy is. The idea that we can bring back manufacturing and pretend that we're back in the 1950s in the United States is ludicrous. But if that were your goal, then you would want to be much more selective with your tariffs, and you would probably do, as President Biden did, do some subsidizing. But, you know, tariffing some African country that sends us a lot of coffee beans is not going to bring coffee production to northern climes in the United States. So this is the thing. One of the reasons the markets are so unsettled is this seems kind of chaotic and irrational, but it leads people to wonder, like, do we have thoughtful people in charge of the U.S. government now, or is this just kind of government by whim? And at the moment, it looks like that's what it is.
I'm sure many in the US are going to be posing that question. This downturn is, of course, having impacts on real lives. I mean, people are worried about their retirement. Tell us about this real wide-reaching effects that these tariffs are having.
So, of course, the tariffs haven't, for the most part, taken effect yet. Some of them will. they will raise prices in the United States, which is an interesting move for the president who won his election on part because people were upset about inflation. So there will be higher prices. You already hear people who are rushing to buy a new car today before the tariffs come in. Secondly, there are, very, very many people in the United States do not work in manufacturing. So while some factories may benefit from this, most people are not factory workers. They're just going to get higher prices. Secondly, nobody likes to see chaos and turmoil and the market sinks 1,000 points. Even if you're not an investor, even if you don't have a big 401k account, it's kind of unnerving. And the third thing is that this happens amid a whole lot of other things that are going on. The president and his advisor, Elon Musk, have gone through the federal government, closed departments, laid off people. That's got a lot of people upset and nervous about their jobs. And some of the things that they've tinkered with, like the Social Security system, are leading to some, or at least are blamed for some outages. You can't get on the Social Security website and stuff like that. So I think there's growing sense of unease that, like, wow, this might not really be the brave new world that President Trump promised us when he campaigned. There were lots of demonstrations across the United States over the weekend. It's really the first time we've seen any kind of mass stuff. So the big question is, will some public outrage, will a few bold senators who are standing up to Trump, and will a plunge in the markets and the cry from the business community and the Wall Street community dissuade President Trump? Or is he so determined to mount this great, you might even call it a revolution in the U.S. government, that nothing will change his mind, and we're just waiting to see. But it's very scary, and it's very unusual for us. We don't usually have episodes like this where so many things are up in the air.
Well, David, of course, this is all happening as Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, is in Washington. He's the first leader to go to the White House following the tariff announcement. And we've heard reports of other leaders calling the White House to try and negotiate. Do you think most leaders are going to be leaning towards negotiation or retaliation?
That's a good question. I don't know. I suspect that Benjamin Netanyahu is more focused on the Middle East tensions in the Middle East and the war and the peace negotiations than he is on tariffs. I think that leaders will be trying to figure out whether President Trump is transactional and whether he'll take a little concession here and a little concession there, or whether he's serious. So because we're such a big economy and because we have such impact on global markets, it would be essential for any wise government leader of another country to at least feel out the president. But I do expect that a number of countries will talk to him, and then if he doesn't relent, retaliate. The Chinese clearly have made that calculation, and we'll see what the others do. But, there's a lot of countries in the world, and you kind of wonder, is the White House switchboard lighting up with prime ministers and trade ministers calling to say, what'll it take for you to back off? It just seems a strange way to run a government.
We'll have to see how this all plays out. Of course, every day seems to bring new news. David, really great to get your insight. Thank you so much for joining us on Prime News Paris today.